Hello everyone, and thank you for clicking on this video. Today I will be discussing whether the act of videotaping an officer while on duty should be considered a criminal offense, and I believe it should not because it is protected under our First Amendment rights in the Constitution, and it can also serve as evidence in a trial just in case any form of police brutality takes place, to make sure that all sides of the story during the arrest are heard, especially the victims, and especially in cases of police brutality. But before I begin making my argument, I must first discuss the Rodney King trial and arrest to show why this important moment in history has changed the way that we as citizens view arrests and law enforcement. So, this case began with the cops chasing Rodney King off the highway. He was speeding and also under the influence at the time, but when they eventually caught up to him in a California suburb, they dragged him out the car and beat him senseless. You could see his wounds here. Um, but little did they know a man named George Holliday was in his apartment filming the entire incident on his camera, and that was later used as evidence toward their trial. The four officers were brought into trial facing charges of assault using a deadly weapon and excessive force by a police officer, but were later acquitted of all charges. People who've been keeping an eye on this trial surely thought that these officers would be incriminated for their actions because the evidence against them was so clear, but many were surprised when that wasn't the case. Literally hours after the decision was made in court, the streets of LA were flooded with crime and violent protests, which resulted in the LA riots. Over 55 lives were lost and 2,000 were injured. While this was a sad time in LA's history, we as a nation will never forget what we learned from this case, that we, as citizens, can stand our ground and have our voices heard by using our cellular devices or recording devices to record any instances that take place between us and the cops, and anyone who tries to tell us otherwise is in the wrong. First and foremost, the act of videotaping a cop while on duty is within your First Amendment right. As long as you are not physically impairing an officer from performing his arrest, then you are within your perfect legal right to film any altercations that take place between an officer and a citizen. Many times, officers tell us as citizens that it is illegal to film them while on duty, but that has never been the case. It has always been protected under the First Amendment, and it is also completely legal across all 50 states to film cops while on duty. Many times when officers notice that they're being recorded, they will ask citizens to put their phones away. You do not have to follow this order. You simply tell them that you know your rights and you will keep recording. Make sure to keep a safe distance though, and try not to physically get in the way of the situation. Because our Constitution has deemed it perfectly legal for us to exercise the right of free speech, we should never shy away from doing so. If we see injustices taking place in our communities, we need to stand up and also be encouraged to record these instances to make sure those who are exploiting the power of law enforcement are being brought to justice. Oftentimes, when a case involves police brutality in concurrence with bystander evidence, the police report will not fall in line with the actions caught on tape. This is why taping police encounters can be incredibly beneficial to these cases. It gives an impartial view of the incident that took place during arrest. For example, in 2016, a case involving victim Alton Sterling in the Baton Rouge Police Department took social media by storm. During Sterling's arrest, the officers claimed that the body cameras dislodged during the takedown. We would have never known if that was actually the truth. Luckily, an eyewitness video captured and detailed clearly the situation that took place at the gas station. Without this evidence, we may have never known that Alton Sterling was indeed tragically murdered by lapse of judgment on behalf of the Baton Rouge police. In recent years, there has been an increased amount of distrust built up between communities and the local law enforcement. Police departments across the nation are getting called out for their dishonesty with the emergence of these bystander video reports. Consequently, it has caused a major division through many communities. Time and time again, police are caught red-handed violating and abusing proper police protocol and training. They react impulsively and completely disregard any of their professional training on how to properly respond and de-escalate a situation. While there is no way of determining who the honest and dishonest cops of the world are, there is one way that we can make sure that every run-in with law enforcement can be brought to justice, and that is to keep our cameras rolling, because without them, we may not be able to expose the truth. As long as bystanders are not physically interfering with an arrest made by an officer, they are within their legal right to film any portion of the encounter. Since we live in a world where police brutality has become increasingly prevalent, it is so critical that citizens keep their lives protected and make sure they do their part to ensure that all sides of the story are heard. Videotaping the police should not be considered a criminal offense, but rather a criminal defense.